Hey peeps, Snave here, back with another video. This time I'm attempting the impossible. I'm attempting to do what no other YouTuber, no other PvPer has even dared to try and attempt. I'm going to try and teach you how to count to 8. I'm hoping my dog is going to be cool for this as well, because I'm really bad at editing, but I've got a nice big cup of coffee, so let me explain to you what I mean by how you count to 8. So, joking aside here, it's probably the biggest issue that I see in warzones these days. It's probably been the biggest issue I've seen in warzones for quite a while, if I'm honest. Players seem to be having a real hard time just working out how player distribution works and how to balance their positioning. So what do I mean by player distribution? It's a pretty simple concept. If you imagine that you're in a war zone, let's give you an easy one here, let's say Civil War, and all 16 players, so all 8 imps and all 8 reps are all at grass side. I don't know what you call that, left, west, whatever, grass. It's the side with grass on it, it's grass side. Well, if all 16 are there, we can logically work out that there's none at the snowy side and there's none at mid. So if anyone realizes this, they can kind of just mosey on over there and cap it. So if you want to see a decent example of this, I think it's Game of the Week 2 is the Civil War Harbinger, where I pretty much exactly do that. I notice that they're overcommitting to certain nodes, and then I just walk in and cap them, basically. So why is player distribution important? It's pretty simple. If your team is split up over various points, then in theory, any numerical player advantage, so like if I have 5 from my team and you have 4, that should allow you to push whatever point you're going for. Class comp and player ability is a factor, obviously, in who wins the fights, but just for the sake of explaining this, we're going to assume that everyone's equally skilled, each team has the same composition, so there's no like 18 healers, 16 tanks. I'm also going to assume that people actually want to win games in addition to farming numbers, because this might actually blow your mind here, right? Get ready for a mind explosion. Despite popular opinion, it is possible to get good numbers and win. I know. So the first part of player distribution seems to get wrong is player advantage. So let me just explain this to you. I'm going to start off using a voidstar because it's the easiest one to explain on. So let's just move the teams in here. Got my nice little icons. See how professional this stuff is, guys? It's amazing. So let's say imps are defending and reps are attacking. So we're going to put 5 on one side and 3 on the other side. So if you imagine that you're on the rep side, if you're attacking this, the side you want to attack is the one with 3 because there's less defenders, okay? So if we just assume, again, that we've got 2 over here, then we can also then assume that the rest of them are going to go over here. Now this is what I mean by player distribution. Okay, so you can see it's a 5v2 on the one side, and obviously then on the other side is a 3v6, which is bad. So you need to think of this like a seesaw. Ideally, if you're defending anyway, you want things to be equal, unless, in the case of attacking, you want to push to try and break one side. So how do you play with this in mind? It's pretty simple. You just count the players in your close proximity, and then you use your judgment to work out how many and where the enemy is. So this can be improved by you and your teammates calling out numbers as accurately as possible. So in this example, I would say like 5 left side, and then from that the person can work out, okay, well there's 3 on the other side. Yeah, and you can look on your map, you can count how many players you have there on the mini map, and you can kind of work out whether the distribution is correct. So with this example here, you got 5v2 on the one side. Now I don't need 5 players to kill 2 players. So what should be happening here is this guy should be going, oh, I want to come over here, and this player should be going, oh, I want to come over here. And then all of a sudden you've got a 3v2 over here, which is around about what you want to have, because you have that floating defender there anyway, and I'll go into that in a second. And on this side then you have 5v6, which again is a lot more favorable. Okay, so does that make sense? Like if you have a 5v2 on one side, then obviously on the other side the rest of the team is there, so you have a 3v6. Anytime you're in a fight where you have a numerical advantage, the odds are the enemy team has an advantage just as strong somewhere else on the team. Now this can get a little bit more blurry, obviously with deaths. If someone gets killed, they have to run back in, so it's not a perfect example, but you can kind of track things out. One thing I would say to be careful of, it doesn't happen super often, it's usually the opposite, but in this instance here, you know, when people run it back, if it's a case where everyone decides to leave, you might want to think, oh, hang on a second, maybe I shouldn't just abandon everyone. Maybe I should, you know, make sure that these two guys are at least killed. And this is why stalling can be so powerful, because, let me just show you here quickly. If there's one person defending versus 2, then over here you have 7 versus 6. So you have an advantage there. So this is the next part I want to go into. And this is the part that everyone seems to get wrong. No one seems to be able to wrap their brain around this at all. And it's not complicated. It's accounting for the defender. Okay? I think probably the best map to show you this one would be Civil War. So let's have a look at Civil War here. Let me just move these back around so that it's more indicative of your average Civil War. So everyone's going to be at mid fighting. Look at these graphics as well, guys. How fancy is this? I know. I'm a professional. So yeah, everyone's fighting at mid here. So you've got one on the sides. Each side, rather. And then you have 7v7 at mid. Okay. So there's one defender on each side, 7v7 at mid. Now, I had this, it happened to me last night actually, where a person was like super proud. They tied up 2 players. They didn't actually cap the node, they just delayed 2 players from going anywhere, I guess. They kept them at snow, which is, it doesn't mean anything. So when it comes to the defender, is if you have one player attacking a node that's otherwise just being defended, you're effectively forcing your team to be 1 player down. And like I just said, a lot of players think that tying up 2 defenders is a great use of time. And don't get me wrong, it can be, depending on who you're tying up. You know, if you've got some amazing god tier player who you can pull out of the game for half of the game, that's good. That's a good use of time, fine. But just on a purely numerical basis, so back to the assumption that equal skill equal comp, 1 friendly player engaging 2 enemy players on the defender node is neutral. There's no difference. So because you have 1 player back there, someone else going there doesn't change that. So using Civil War, we've got it all loaded up here. If I'm defending grass, because grass is love, grass is life, and the enemy has 1 defending snow, we both have 7 effective in the middle. So someone coming across the grass will just make it 7v6 at middle. So if this guy comes over here, hello Snave, hello. Right, so now they have 6, and now we have 7. So we have a player advantage there. Now, nothing's happened here. I'm here anyway. You know, there's no difference with this. I'm gonna be at grass. So them coming there doesn't somehow give them advantage anywhere else. And you can just stall them out. And if you stall them out, sometimes it is better to stall them rather than kill them. You're basically giving your team a player advantage. That's pretty much how it works. So if they send 2 back, well, okay, now it's 5 versus 7. So we're, again, more likely to do it. But we can drop a player back here. We can defend with 2. Yeah, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they have 5. So if you have a 2v2 on an off node, you aren't giving your team an advantage at all. It doesn't work. If you tie 2 up, so let's say that this guy's gone over here and he's stalling 2 defenders, well, what does that actually mean? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Absolutely nothing. It's still 6v6, which is the same 7v7. In terms of, you know, the pluses and minuses, having fewer players there tends to stress the player advantage a little bit more. Like, for example, getting 2v1 is generally faster than, you know, being 8v7. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever had an arena where it loads where it's 3v4. Those tend to be very, very one-sided, whereas 8v7 tends to be a lot less. So you can still stall them out. But the point I'm making here is, if you're trying to stall 2 players because, oh my god, I'm stalling 2 players, you aren't actually gaining anything. Now, I stall 2 players all the time. So, hey Snave, why do you stall players all the time? Okay, generally speaking, it'll take 3 for them to cap. So they'll send a 3rd back. Now, when they send a 3rd back, so here's, let's say I've gone over here, so they'll send 2 back, and also you got to bear in mind that normally they haven't capped, so they are effectively losing points by doing this. I'll just run around rifle shotting them, and they'll have to send a 3rd one back, and generally then they'll cap it. Now, if they send a 3rd back, not only are we winning because assuming we've already capped ours, but they also have 5 players versus 6 players. So we have a player advantage. So me being there isn't super detrimental. It actually has a purpose. I'm stalling them and I'm preventing them from getting nodes. The same thing with like Hypergate, you're preventing them from capping, which means they have to send more back. And then generally speaking, you'll get 3 back. And then 3 is a lot harder to defend against than 2. So another reason that I do it as well personally is because being stalled will cause an enemy team to make really bad decisions regarding the distribution later on in the game. So a great example of this is something like Hypergate, where even if I haven't stalled it for the full round, like so even if they have capped their node at some point in time, the fact that I've stalled them out will generally mean they will send 3 or 4 players back the following round. Now, I've seen examples where they send 6+. I've seen them send 8 back. You know, they've done a full Gary Oldman and Leon across the cap their node, which just wrecks them then, because let's just say they send 4, and we'll use Hypergate as an example. If they send 4 in Hypergate, then they're going to have 4, assuming in mid. They'll get killed by you at 8 players or 7 players, assuming you have 1 cap in. That's 7v4. Then you'll cap 4 orbs and run them in. So you get kills, you get orbs, and it just destroys them. Even if they cap, it doesn't mean that much because they've just got half of their team killed. If they then flood forward, again, you have another numerical advantage because you know, you should really kill them with that level of player advantage. Another reason, and it's very good, especially in Civil War, is if I've stalled people for a long time, everyone returns back, and I kind of show up again and give a little threatening, I'm so scary. They have been known, it happens quite a lot, they will then double defend. As soon as they double defend, I will drop back to mid. I'm happy to let a team double defend. Double defending gives you a constant player advantage for the rest of the game. I would rather players double defend, to be honest with you, than just try and sap cap or flashbang cap, whatever, one person. Because now we have 7, they have 6, so we are more likely to cap it. Just playing the odds is more likely to happen. So the way that I've always thought about this, because I see a lot of players make very like gung-ho plays on the off node. I think of attacking the off node as being a very selfish play. It's hurting my team basically. That's the way that I look at it. I'm hurting my teammates. When I'm there, that means I'm not helping them doing whatever they are doing, whether that's trying to cap the middle part, maybe that's trying to stay alive. I'm not peeling for my healers, you know, I'm not chucking in off heals, yeah, a lot like I do off heals. But you get my point, I'm actually hurting my team. So if you think of it that way, you'll tend to visualize it a little bit differently. Because, you know, I play with friends, or I have played with friends, I don't want to be a burden on my team. I don't want to be the guy that, you know, cocks things up. I want to make sure that I'm aware of the risks that I'm taking. It is a risk, by the way, you have to bear this in mind, because a 1-player advantage can be a big deal, especially if your team is spread out, and especially if it's a close game. If you aren't watching things carefully, you can cost your team the game. And I've done that many times. Don't think I'm some kind of saint. I've lost games for my team many times, but I've also won games. You know, so there's a risk reward element to it. And the best advice I can give you is, if you don't understand the risk reward of trying to mess with player distribution, just don't do it. just play it safe, don't do anything, just go to the most populated node and try and help out, because I've seen a lot of people with good intentions make a lot of really, really terrible decisions that have cost people games. The other thing you have to be wary of is, say for example, you think to yourself, oh, I'm going to go and poke this node. Well, someone might see that and then go, well, I'm going to follow you, because I mean that's what people do in this game. So you have to be aware that you could potentially be cocking things up with people. So let's take a look at a few maps here, and we'll try and go through some of the distribution and how it works. So let's start off with voidstar, because this is a good one to talk about when it comes to class distribution, because it's really very, very linear. So let's just assume that everyone, in most maps you'll have one side which is attacked more than the other. People are very, very, very infrequently, if ever, doing perfect 4-4 splits. Generally speaking, they'll all pile down one side. Certainly that's the way it is on the Red Eclipse. Actually, it's the way it is on every server that I've ever played on. The reason that you want to push one side is very simple. It's player distribution. Let's put this guy here because he's clearly hacking. Alright, so we've got 7v8. You've got one defender. Let's put him here. So this guy is defending the door, not really doing anything. He's effectively useless. He's not doing anything at all. He's the goalkeeper, which means it's 8v7 on this side. Now, seeing as voidstar is decided by kills if the first door isn't capped, this means that you can push your extra DPS, your extra healing, whatever is the advantage that you have, to try and kill these players one at a time or in a group and then cap the door. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll go, all right, okay, well, I'm going to try and attack this door now. Okay, so now this player who was doing nothing is now engaged. He's now contributing to the team. He's now contributing to the fight. You were 8v7 is now a 7v7. Effectively, this player has killed someone over this side in terms of how you need to view this. Yeah, this guy here is useless. Now, the other thing about it is that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah? 8 over here, and we have 7 defenders. This is meant to be 8v7. That is the correct order of this. If I bring this player back over here to defend, so we have 2 defenders against this player, it's exactly the same state. So what I was saying earlier, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 6, which is the same as if they both went over there. So does that mean you should never ever do a split? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that if you are doing a split, you have to be aware that you are giving up a player advantage. And is the risk that you were taking here worth giving up that player advantage? Now, I'm not great at 1v1s, but I'm pretty good at capping people with stuns and everything else. So yeah, I'll give it a punt every now and then. Especially if I, like say for example, I see a jug and he's standing there. Yeah, I'll have a bash of that. I can sap him, I can cap the door. When he breaks, I can flashbang him, I can cap the door. There's a good chance that works, and there's a good chance that I can do that before any help comes back over. That's the other thing, okay? But usually, let's say they've got a good operative defender. I won't bother. What's the point? The odds of me capping them 1v1 are pretty minimal if it's a decent operative defender. So there's no point. I will just push the advantage here. Now, if this isn't working, this is what I'm saying, that splits aren't necessarily always terrible. What you can do is try and just create some chaos. So if you have people go in over here quickly, here we go. So now it's 4v1. Well, these guys have to respond, so they'll probably try and send 3 back. But as these are moving, you can try and block them and slow them here. They give this guy a bit more time. These guys a bit more time to try and get there. Okay, so you need to be aware of these things when it comes to distribution, because if this doesn't work, right, you've now got 4v6 here. So I mean, theoretically, these guys should be dying. There's a 2-player advantage. You know, maybe they only send 3. You know, do you see what I mean with this? You've got to kind of visualize how it's being balanced out like that seesaw. Can I stall these 3 guys? Maybe I can't. So I'm running around here doing my usual rifle shot, playing a little game of touch butt. And if I can't get help back, then they might cap it. It has happened in many games. So I'm not saying that splitting is always bad. I'm just saying be aware of the risk and reward. And if you aren't, don't do it, because otherwise what happens is, let's say these 3 guys come over here and they're not very good, and I just rifle shot them and they don't cap for ever, then we have an advantage here. We'll just wipe them out, we'll get kills, we win the game. That's pretty much the too long didn't read of how that would work. Another good one to look at is Ancient Hypergate. I like Ancient Hypergate because, strictly speaking, no one should ever go mid. In terms of the most effective strategy, people just shouldn't go mid, but we do, because, you know, I don't really know why people go mid, to be honest with you. But generally what will happen is one person will cap one node, the other person will cap the other node. Everyone else goes into mid. These pro skills, guys. Alright, there's a little bit out of mid, but it's a bit busy otherwise. So, Ancient Hypergate works in a way where if you're dying, you're giving away points. So if I die once in round 1, they get 3 points, but they also get those 3 points in round 2, they also get them in round 3, they also get them in round 4. So assuming it goes on for 4 rounds, that one kill has given them 3, 6, 9, 12 points, which is not insignificant when multiplied by many players. That's why, generally speaking, in the first round you want to get as many kills as possible, or is it generally not worth as much. So why would I stall in the first round here? Because I want to mess with their player distribution is the reason why. I'm still very much on the fence as to whether this is correct or not. The main reason I do it fairly consistently is because it's the correct thing against good teams, and it also works relatively well against bad teams. So I tend to kind of err towards stalling. So let's just say there's the 2 of us here, and I'm stopping this guy from capping. Well, they'll send 2 back. So now that's neutral. They've got a minute 30 to cap this, or they get 0 points. Now, 2 players will have a difficult time capping, so generally they'll send back 3. When this happens, you tend to get a situation where these players here, because they're outnumbered, will start dying. Also, you've got to bear in mind that if they don't cap this, they don't get any points. So all of those kills or orbs or whatever it is they picked up this round, they don't mean anything. They get nothing, and just from having ours, we'll get 75. So yeah, you can really push that. So maybe towards the end of the round, a 4th comes back, and the more they send back, even if you die, the way that you've got to think of it is, will me tying up 2, 3, 4, 5, however many players enable us to get more kills than my death? Or maybe you can vanish out at the end of the round and try and run away if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But that's the way that I think about it. Does me tying up 3 players and then dying allow us on the other side to get more than 1 kill? Does that player advantage allow us to get more than 1 kill? Do you see how I'm thinking here with this? It's more about the kind of the overall view of the game, because me dying, tying up 4 for a minute 30 might enable us to get 4 kills and orbs, which is greater than my death. If they go to stall hours, then obviously you just move the numbers around accordingly to whatever it is that you have to do. But the basic principle is, you want it to be slightly outnumbered somewhere if you are secure that you can outmaneuver the team you're against. So I don't mind being outnumbered here, because that means my team is outnumbering them somewhere else on the field. That's the point of me doing it. I don't care if I get killed by 2, 3, 4, 5 players. It doesn't personally bother me, and it helps my team. And really, that's the kind of way that I look at player distribution. Are you standing in a place which is helping your team or hurting your team? If you're in a position that hurts your team, why are you there? Is there a payoff for you being there? So in this situation here, the ultimate payoff is I stall it for the full round. They get no points, and we get kills here. You know, that's the idea behind it. If you look at something like Navarre Coast, this one's a bit more interesting because there's 3 points here, and also you tend to you can cap in like little ticks and increments. So player advantage can be quite a big deal. So again, generally you'll have this, and these guys will all be south. Okay, so that's pretty much how it goes. One guy caps there, one guy caps there. Now you can overlap here, and you can stall this guy out. I think it's less important, to be honest with you, in Navarre Coast. If they send 2 back, you're trying to get caps off. So having the player advantage here is nice, because you have an extra person to click, or you have an extra person to pull other people away. But that's a neutral thing. You don't actually gain points for having one, you have to have the two. Like for example in Civil War, it's always worth storing them, because as soon as you cap yours, you instantly start getting points. In this one you need two to get points, so it's a bit less relevant, unless of course obviously they send 3 back, and then you can just, you know, Gareth Bale back to mid if you want to. That's kind of the idea behind it. So it's, other than that, it's the same principle. You want to keep as many players balanced out as possible, and you want to try and force the issue when it comes to player distribution. So how can you mess around with player distribution? Because there's a big gap here in terms of like travel time. You can't just like pop over there to do it. You can pull players down to the side here. You can push them back away from the node over there, and you can create that space, and you can basically split it into, if you imagine there's a line going down the middle, like directly through the middle, you can try and split it so you push them over to one side, and then players can come back and cap the other side. You know, when it comes to player distribution, it doesn't necessarily have to be built into just the specific nodes that are there. You can just kind of outmaneuver them that way. You can do dummy attacks over here. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about, it's pretty much the last point that I wanted to talk about when it comes to player distribution, is pull in the goalkeeper. So what do I mean by pulling the goalkeeper? So if we just call the defender the goalkeeper, he's there, probably on Reddit or something, just taking his time whilst, you know, defending. No one's really going there, no one's really going there. Well, this guy can go over here. And this forces a player advantage, because effectively what you've done is you've pulled your goalkeeper out of goals and you've made them attack. Now, if the enemy team is astute, what they can do is that. They can send the player across from mid across to you node, and they can then get a free cap on it. Obviously you can counter this by doing that, but then we're pretty much in the same position that we were anyway to begin with. If they don't notice that it's the defender, and I'll be honest with you, most of the time they don't. A lot of players won't even bother to, you know who the defender is. What happens is they'll send another player back, and all of a sudden you've got that extra player advantage. You're using your defensive player offensively to give you a greater advantage somewhere else on the pitch. So now it's 7v6 here. So again, you should use that to your advantage, and you should get things. You can even send a player back to defend here. Once you get things, if it looks like you are capping, if you're pushing them back, you can have one guy rotating around. One thing I've seen, or I've done myself, to a pretty good effect is, if you say that we have their pylon and mid, and they have our pylon, but they're attacking theirs. And I have done this on many occasions, and I can confirm it does work pretty well. So yeah, we have south, and we have right, east. These guys are all pushing. They have this side here. Yeah. So let's assume we have both sides actually, so that's easier to explain. I'm terribly sorry, just forget everything I said. So we have this side, and we have the two at the top there. Okay, so they are pushing this, they spawn here, it's easier for them to get here, and it's easier for them to wipe us out, which is the other thing in player distribution, how quickly you can refill things. So we have to run all the way across, all the way back from the beginning to the right hand side, which is obviously longer. So what you can do is, let's say this is me here, and let's say this is someone else, let's say this is Snave 2. So as I die, this person can be moving over here. So it isn't defended, but it also isn't, because as soon as this opens up, I'm going to be coming back out, and I'm going to be going in to take over defending. And then when they die, same thing happens. And you can do this with 2 or 3 players, you know, if you know what you're doing. You can kind of rotationally defend. So no one is really defending this for a lot of the time, but someone is always kind of defending it. You know, if this is a full door, then maybe someone could, you know, ninja in and cap it, but it's pretty unlikely. It's like a 15-second door and an 18-second cap, so it's unlikely. and generally you can stop someone from doing it. So that's that one. And the last one I wanted to go over was everyone's favorite, which is Hutball, because Hutball's distribution is a little bit, it's very important, but it's a little bit different to the other ones because it's a different type of map. So with Hutball, the way that you look at distribution is like a game of football. So people will generally, again, be towards the middle in Hutball. Oh, did I have that one selected already? Never mind. Move that in. So everyone is here. Now, when a team is scoring, so let's assume that the rep side is scoring. This guy's got the ball here, so he's here. Normally, you'll have like a guy here helping him and a guy there helping him, and someone will be chasing him here. You know what Hutball looks like. Yeah, you got players back here. Now, everyone's kind of like pushed up supporting him. When it gets to this point, and you think, do you know what? I cannot stop that ball from going in. It's just not going to happen. They're going to score. Well, what you need to do is get back to mid, because the mechanic for winning this game, and this is the overall thing when it comes to player distribution, is the mechanic for winning, on any given map. On this case, it's getting the ball when it respawns. So if you can keep these players there and you can control mid, even if they score, you will get the rebound and then you can go and score. Yeah, makes sense. And then you can control mid again so that you can carry on doing that. But really, Hutball is a game of, it doesn't matter how great you are, if you don't get the ball, you're not scoring. So you have to get the ball. You do that through player distribution. You can be clever about it. There's ways to kind of mitigate it. Like, for example, you've got phase walk with assassins. They can phase walk back in. Oh, sorry, not for long. Sorry, assassins. Sorks, they could do it. You've got like knockbacks and not away from clicking it. You know, you got snipers with entrench. You've got operatives with roll, assuming that it works. You know, there's ways to get around that mechanic, but that's pretty much the mechanic of the map. Anyway, so the long and the short of this, guys, let me just load up this Civil War map again. The one thing I want everyone to take away from this, assuming you're still watching, is when you are trying to work out what you're doing in terms of how many players are where, please bear in mind that the defender is effectively not in the game unless you enable him. So 1v1 or 2v1 in this situation does not give you an advantage. That's the first thing. And second of all, when it comes to the whole distribution, where people are standing, you know, where everyone's moving, you've got to really work out that if you have an advantage somewhere, the odds are someone else doesn't have an advantage elsewhere. If you are having a 5v1, then that means there's a 7v3 going on somewhere else in some kind of makeup. If you can call out with accurate numbers, that's very, very helpful. One of the things, my pet peeves is when someone overcalls. It's happened a lot to me in Navarre Coast. Someone will say, for example, incoming 6, and I go, well, there's 2 here, so there's no defender. And I go there, and they have 2 defenders. And I'm like, well, where did these guys come from? He just said there was 6 over there. You know, you try and be as accurate as possible, but also in your mind, just try and keep an idea as to where everyone is located. If you can just track your friendly players on the mini-map in relation to what you can see, you can pretty much work out where everyone is. So hopefully now you understand the importance of counting to 8 and why it is actually a significant advantage. Because if I see there's 6 players there, or at the defensive node with the defender, so 7, then I can assume that there's 1 at mid. So if I go there, I'm expecting to face 1. And if it's a visible player, then I expect to cap him without any resistance or any help when else turning up. And that's really how you got to view it. Also, another thing to take away, if you don't understand this, go mid. Just go mid. Be very careful when you push in the off nodes, because you can end up costing your team a lot. Anyway, this video was much longer than I thought it would be. So anyone who made it this long, cheers, thank you very much. And hopefully I will see you again soon. Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye. Oh, wait, I meant to shell out as well, aren't I? Sorry. You can catch my stream live, hitbox.tv/Snave. Obviously, this is my YouTube, and I'm on Twitter, Snave1208. Hey, cheers, guys. Ta-da.